Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries from across the country, and joining me on this segment is Larry Lane. He's the founder of the VR Dallas office. Larry, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Larry, tell us a little bit about your work and who are the types of clients that you specialize in helping?
Okay. Well, we are business intermediaries. So our focus is to help people sell their business when they're ready to exit. Our typical client is a small to mid-sized privately held company. We're typically dealing with companies that have revenues up to about $20 million. We pretty much service all industries. We've handled everything from donut shops to manufacturing facilities to auto transport companies, just about any kind of business that fits that revenue range, we'll take a look at.
When folks are considering selling and reach out to you, what's the number one thing you would say is the concern on their mind?
Well, I think that price is obviously their their big concern. What kind of value do they have on their business? A lot of people are not aware of what the process is, so they don't know how long it's going to take. They don't know what's really going to be required of them during that process. So oftentimes it's an education process just to make them aware of what to expect.
Larry, tell us a little bit of something like people that have been in business for a long time, many years, they're thinking growth, 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 and oftentimes they don't have the end in mind, like the exit plan. So if they don't know what they don't know, tell us a few of the myths or misconceptions that people think about when it comes to selling their business. What are people thinking?
Well, I think that again, they owners tend to have a misconception about what their value is. I always advise people to get a valuation on your business every few years. At least do it once so you know what the process is like. And we meet with owners that have had their business for 25 years, have never had a business valuation performed on their business. They've assumed that there's a certain value out there. Maybe they got a number from a friend down the street who sold their business, and it was a completely different type of business, completely different size, but they assumed since they live in the same neighborhood, they must have the same lifestyle, must have the same value on their business. So that's one of the bigger issues that we contend with on a regular basis.
How early should folks really start planning and getting things in order to sell their business? And what are those things that they need to really focus on?
Well, the planning should really start. I always tell people to sell. The planning process should start the day you buy the business. So you have the end game in mind. A real timeline is probably about 3 years for most people. Lenders tend to look at 3 years of history when they're evaluating a business to lend on. Most buyers are sort of conditioned to think in terms of looking at a 3 to 5 year history on a business. So you can start putting things in place in that timeline to be in a position to maximize your business value. Get your financial statements in order. If you've been running a lot of expenses through the business that are more personal in nature, sort of living out of the business, so to speak, start trimming that back. Even though it may cost you more in taxes, you're going to get that in return when you sell the business based on the multiple you may be attaining. So those are the timelines that I typically advise people to look at. As far as the process itself, the average time statistically to sell a business is 7 months, but we advise people to be prepared for at least a year, depending on how it's valued and what we're looking to attain.
I heard a recent statistic, and underinformed sellers that put their businesses on the market, like a large percentage of them go unsold. Can you kind of give us an insight on what makes a business not sell, or what's a deal killer? What are some of the biggest things that you've seen in your
Yeah,
experience?
about 83% of all businesses that go on the market do not sell. The number one reason is because of unrealistic expectations, primarily price, but also sometimes the process itself wears down a seller to where they abandon the process. But the number one issue is price. They do not have a realistic expectation of value for their business. So people like me sometimes have to deliver bad news. We're happy to deliver good news, but sometimes the bad news is a shock to people.
Larry, we're in a unique time right now. We've got a large number of folks retiring from business and selling businesses, but then you also hear in the news the great resignation, people wanting to get into business and buy a business. What have you seen out there recently? Is this really a good time to sell or buy a business?
It is a good time to sell if your business is positioned properly to maximize value. Buyers are out there. We see a lot of activity right now and have been for the last 6 months to a year. Obviously, COVID in 2020 really hurt the market, but that's all come back, is on an upswing. Buyers are out there. So if you've got a good business that has a lot of the other things in place you need beyond making money, then you're positioned well to maximize your value right now.
Larry, what inspired you to get in this field and help people sell their businesses? How did you get started?
Well, my background is in franchising. I was with Fast Signs International for 21 years. Started with the company when it was a fairly young company. We had less than 20 stores. When I left 21 years later, we had 540 stores open and operating. Those are all franchised operations. So my experience was helping people get into business, succeed in their business, grow it, and then when they were ready to exit, we as a franchisor were active in helping people find a buyer for their business. So when they exited, they attained maximum value. So that was my background and experience. I thoroughly enjoyed that process. When it was time for me to look for something to do on my own, it seemed like a good fit just to remain in the business transaction field, but be able to expand beyond one industry.
Larry, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask that you feel is important to share today for anyone considering selling a business in today's market or even buying a business in today's market?
Well, the one thing I think that people should be aware of are that there are other elements to maximizing values than just the number. Businesses are typically sold on a multiple of earnings, so earnings are critical to the process. But when people are looking at buying a business, they look at other elements. What's the staffing like? Is there a management team in place? Is there a tenured staff? Is the business solely reliant on the owner to be growing the business and responsible for the business? So the more that an owner has positioned their business to not be reliant upon them, that is valuable to a buyer. If you've let a business run down, you may still be maximizing your profits, but you haven't positioned it to look well. Then you've hurt your value some. So you should always be thinking of, how would I look at this business if I was going to buy it? No different than you look at your home. If I was going to buy this home, what would I need to update and fix? And you need to be constantly thinking about that as a business owner as well to truly maximize the value opportunity.
Sage advice. Larry, for folks listening now that are considering selling and they realize, whoa, I need to get some of these things in order. And if they'd like to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Well, our company is VR Business Brokers in Dallas. Our website is vrdallas.com. My email is llane@vrdallas.com, and our phone number is 214-733-8282.
Larry, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you stopping by and taking the time to share with my audience today. And I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Well, thank you very much. Same to you. Appreciate it.
That was the Larry Lane. He's the founder of VR Dallas. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.